Welcome to the fun-filled Monday edition of Second City Sports. We're live in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago, along with Mr. Kim McGee, which is she. I am Sidney Brown here. That's me. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You can follow my Keenan McGee on the Twitter, X or whatever they're called it, and Keenan McGee on the IG.
That's a new rapper's name, Twitter X. Make sure you download the Sports Zone Chicago app wherever you get your apps. You want to know why? Because we said so, that's why. And also, too, you can catch up on the other live shows that we have airing throughout the week. So you happen to miss them, you can go back and watch them and listen to them at your own leisure. Make sure you download the Sports Zone Chicago app today. Speaking of Sports Zone Chicago, please follow us on all social media platforms on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Once again, please find Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms. And while you're at it, please subscribe to our podcast at War Media Podcast. That's WARR Media, PODCASTS. And we are on all platforms, including the iHeartRadio app. And while you're at it, please give War Media a follow at WARR Media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Once again, that's at War Media, WARR Media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And thank you very much in advance for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
We are unapologetically fun, and we have very definite opinions. If you have any definite opinions during our 2-hour extravaganza we call it Sports Talk Radio Show, you can always hit us up in the comment section at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in those questions and comments in the comments section. Lakina will get them up on the screen for you. But if you decide to troll and don't do something stupid, I've given Lakina full power to give you folks to build and be beat. But before we begin, we must remind you that you can also catch Sports Zone Chicago live and in living color, available now on Roku TV. That's right. So celebrate with the squad and get with the program. Sports Zone Chicago is now available on Roku TV. If you already have a Roku television, just tap on that sports folder and download that Sports Zone Chicago app. If you don't have a Roku TV, but you have some handheld devices laying around, iPhone, iPad, iTouch, your Chromebook, or your personal PC, just head over to the Google Play Store, download that Roku TV app, and access Sports Zone Chicago through that avenue. So no more excuses. Celebrate the squad and get with the program. Sports Zone Chicago is now available on Roku TV. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, live and on demand.
Anytime, anywhere.
And you know we will provide.
Yes, we always will, as I keep waiting here. Sorry, folks. Okay, we got a busy show coming up here on Second City Sports. Vincent Parise, who you guys, if you guys watch this, listen to stuff, read his stuff on Fansided. You see him on the Barroom Network. He's going to talk White Sox as they start to, trade some of their guys, and also to preview Bears and also the rest of MLB. Also, we got Old School TV Monday, of course. As usual on Monday, we're going to talk more baseball and all that. So lots to do, coming up here on Second City Sports. We're going to talk some football right now as teams around the league start padded practices, I should say. Of course, the Bears won't start theirs till Wednesday. But, some of the various sort of, news that's been flown around. I guess the big news is that Dalvin Cook, visited the Jets facility. He kind of spent the whole weekend there. And although the visit went well, no contracts has been made or what have you. So, Sid, do you think that Dalvin Cook would be a good fit for the Jets?
Yes, I think so, because of what their running back situation is, especially with now second-year running back Breece Hall. Of course, he's still recovering from the torn ACL that he suffered midway through last year. He was having a good year for the Jets, and I think that's one of the reasons why their season took a downturn besides their bad quarterback play, i.e. Zach Wilson. But Breece Hall's injury at Denver last year was the other domino that fell. The reason why the Jets did not win a single game after going 7-4 to start the year. So I think that Dalvin Cook will be a good signing for the Jets because he brings depth to that backfield. He can definitely help out Breece Hall. Breece Hall can take his time some more and get back in recovery from that torn ACL. And he's going to give that veteran help to quarterback Aaron Rodgers as well.
Yeah, and I think, kind of like that way he won't have to depend on his arm so much, because he is, because we know A-Rod's getting up there in age, so definitely having a veteran like, Dalvin Cook, who's still, he's only 28, so it's still pretty youngish, I guess, by NFL standards when it comes to running back. And I'm sure that they will love to kind of like, liven that backfield up, because who knows how long it'll take before Hall, kind of gets back to his normal, playing shape. So I think having someone there who's already seasoned, who can, move the chains and all that, I think that could definitely, but you never had too many running backs, I guess, if that's sort of like a thing now, since running backs have become undervalued, it feels like the last couple of years. But I think having like I said, a veteran presence there, I think that definitely will help the Jets should he decide to sign there.
Yeah, like I said, I think he will help the Jets as well. With Aaron Rodgers being as old as he is, you cannot have too many weapons. And for any team to succeed offensively, you got to have a great offensive line. You got to have a couple of good running backs, especially in today's NFL, even though they're undervalued in terms of contracts. You got to have those to take some time off that clock and chuck up some important yards, especially late in ball games. And, of course, you got to have some stud wide receivers who can go up and catch the ball.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that definitely will help the Jets, especially in that aspect of it. So they will have different ways, different places to go, who to throw to. So it's going to be very interesting to see what the Jets decide to do. I mean, should Cook decide to sign the contract, it'll be interesting to see how much money it'll be, how much incentives and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Will he have to hit a certain benchmark to kind of get those extra incentives? So I think that can only help him in that front.
Yeah, and like you said, if they can work out the numbers, he'll be a great fit. I know Miami's has been one of the other teams that's been mentioned for Mr. Cook's services. Also to Buffalo, we'll get to them in a minute, but they could use a running back like Dalvin Cook because, as I said before, and I'll say it again, to Bills head coach Sean McDermott, Josh Allen is one of the best young quarterbacks in the league. He's been a veteran now for the last few years. If you let him outrun your running backs, there's a problem. And that right elbow injury that he suffered last year should not be ignored. Now, hopefully, he had an epiphany this offseason. We'll see what happens this year. But I think if the Jets can work out the certain terms in terms of the numbers in the contract, Dalvin Cook should be a Jet by the time we get back on these hours on Friday.
I'll be interested to see. We'll see if there is going to be an official contract signing. Another running back, on the flip side, though, that is not very happy as just Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. Lakeem McGee, Cindy Brown with you, is Pro Bowler Jonathan Taylor from the Colts. If apparently, I guess he wants to trade. All this kind of scuttlebutt came out over the weekend. He wants to trade. Owner Jim Irsay says not a chance. Not now, not December, not ever. And now that's becoming a little bit of a scuttlebutt. And now Zach Moss, who's their secondary guy, who's one of their young guys, he suffered a broken arm at practice today. So he might he'll miss about 6 weeks. So, things are, and then of course, rookie QB Anthony Richardson is going to be sent out for a little bit because he had a nasal procedure over the weekend too, I guess they reported deviated septum. So he's not going to be practicing for a few weeks. So a lot of weird things are happening over at Colts camp, and not in a good way. So what do you think of all this sort of like the weird and the bad juju, as our buddy Twan Staley, who writes for the Daily News of what the Jets would say?
Here's the thing: you don't want to wish any injuries on anybody, especially in a situation like the Colts. They're going through a rebuild. They're going through a transition right now. If you're Jonathan Taylor in the back of your mind, this is the way to up your value with the coach to say, hey, my backup is down. You need me. We'll see what happens next. But with Mr. Taylor, he led the league in rushing last year with that whole quarterback carousel with Matt Ryan and some of the other rookies that came in there last year. His value is very high, but as we talked about in the last couple of weeks, these owners do not want to pay running backs because they view running backs as with miles on their tires. And just like head coach Bill Belichick, as we call him on this show, with the New England Patriots, to a smaller extent, not too many people want to bring his name up, but Andy Reid of the Kansas City Chiefs. We all know that in the NFL, especially in certain positions, when you reach the age of 30, that's senior citizen age in the NFL because of all the miles on the tires, and you're more prone to risk of injury. It increases even higher. So the running backs are in a tough position right now. Could Jonathan Taylor work for? Can his value be worth more on other teams that are better? Of course it can, but right now he's looking at his current situation with the Colts. We're going through the transition. I've been here for a couple years. I see how this league is. I know what the business is like. I want to go somewhere and win now.
Yeah, no, and I think the Colts are not there yet. They got a whole new coaching staff. They got a
Mm-hmm.
whole different different vibe. Of course, they drafted Anthony Richardson among others. So it is
Mm-hmm.
definitely going to be like I'm sure he probably saw it. I'm talking about Taylor saw it as like, nah, you know what, get me out of here. Like I want to, I'm getting older now. I mean, I want to go to a place where my services will be used. And look, I'm sure there are various teams that would love to have him on there. I mean, on their team, of course, Buffalo. I know Sid hates him when Josh Allen the last couple of years has been the leading rusher for the Bills squad. I know. Look, I'm sure the Ravens would love you wouldn't mind having more running backs there. And look, there's going to be a lot of teams, especially contending teams. We'll get to all the rest of the stuff in a little bit, but I think if this sort of like scuttlebutt kind of continues, so if Taylor, God forbid, holds out, that's definitely not going to help. So this could end up being a distraction. So like he's one of the top rushers in the league, and I feel like it's going to be interesting to see if how this will shake out and how this will be resolved if it does get resolved within the next few weeks.
If you're in the Indianapolis Colts, you hope it gets resolved very soon because, like you mentioned, their backup running back went down with an injury over the weekend. Plus, you're still trying to sign guys in and out to trying to fill the football team. And your preseason opener, just like everyone else, is in a couple of weeks. And you have to go out there to find out to see who's going to fit this roster for the long term. And I'm sure higher ups think that Jonathan Taylor is part of their plans to get this transition going to move it forward. But if Jonathan Taylor continues this holdout, I don't think it's going to serve well for him down the line. It looks good right now, but I don't know if it's going to serve him as far as the long run is concerned. For the Indianapolis Colts, of course, you want it to end because you want to use Jonathan Taylor's value for all it's worth because of the injuries that you have. And plus, outside of a couple stud players on defense, you're not very good right now from a 53-man roster standpoint. So if you're the Colts, obviously you want this to end quickly. If you're Jonathan Taylor, you're trying to get your best value possible elsewhere, forcing yourself out of there via trade.
Yeah, that's something that I'm sure Ursa does not want to do that, but he may not have a choice, especially if Taylor does hold out. This is going to lead into something, it's going to get a little bit dicey. So we'll see what happens with that. And one little sort of tip that seems to be resolved is the Vikings and another Pro Bowler pass rusher, Danielle Hunter. I know some Bears fans are wanting him, to perhaps maybe, via trade, but then it comes out yesterday that they have agreed to a 1-year, $20 million extension. He's going to get $17 million guaranteed, and he's also going to get $3 million sack incentives. I guess the number of sacks he gets, the more sacks he gets, that number goes up to the $3 million in the incentives. So they're able to work things out. And I think if you're the Vikings, you want to kind of, you've got rid of some of your other top guys. You released Cook. You didn't re-sign Adam Thielen, among others. So having the guy that is familiar to Vikings fans, I think that can only help them. And he has a lot. And look, Hunter has a lot of incentives to play too. So this actually kind of worked out a little bit in both their favors.
Yeah, and as we said last year, and we'll say it again this year, the Minnesota Vikings are in transition defensively because you saw what they did last year. They weren't very good. I'm talking about in terms of their defense. They were saved by that offense, as we told you guys last year. That was what's going to happen. That's what ended up happening. As the Vikings won 14 out of 17 games before bowing down the wild card round against the Giants at home. But their defense still has a lot of work to do, and they need to get younger players in there, especially with the salary cap era that we're in right now, which is not going anywhere. You need to get younger. You need to get more athletic, especially at the defensive ends for the Minnesota Vikings. So, like you said, they got that move does help, but they still have more work to do, and that secondary is not very good either. So I know they still have Harrison Smith there, but they still have work to do, and it's all about for them just getting the best people there. It's patchwork at this point, but as far as getting them to where they really wanted to be like they were about 3 or 4 years ago, they still have a lot of work to do. It's just all about patchwork for them at this point.
Yeah. Well, like I said, we'll see once we do. We'll talk more about the Vikings and how their future is when we go through our digital previews in a few weeks. So, any other NFL news before we go to breaking over up against it?
How long do you think it takes before the Bears sign a veteran pass rusher between now and the start of the preseason in a couple of weeks? Do you think it's going to, in your view, do you think that's going to happen, or do you think we'll have to wait longer into the middle of the preseason for them to sign a veteran pass rusher, because there's a few that are out there.
There are more than a few, and I think they may want to wait and see how this new young core back in the front seven, how they play. And I think that's really gonna be sort of like the thing where that we'll have to wait. I know Ryan Poles has been kind of keeping his ears and eyes, to the ground. So I'm wondering that he may have a couple of guys in mind. I think he just wants to wait and see how they do in their first preseason game. So, like you said, we'll see what happens. But yeah, I think they will. I think it'll be sooner rather than later they do sign a veteran pass rusher.
I'm kind of with you on that. Selfishly, I want them to do it now, but like you said, that they'll probably have to wait till after the first preseason game, which is in a couple of weeks, and we'll see what happens. I know people want things to happen right away, but it doesn't work that way, especially the way that Ryan Poles is trying to build this thing for the Chicago Bears for the long term. In this era of the NFL, things can happen within a couple of years. You may have instant success, but as far as long term, you have to be careful. And if you're not careful, you'll disappear. Just look at the last regime we had in Chicago. Yes, Matt Nagy went to the playoffs twice in his 4 years, but the way that team was built and all the injuries and all the other stuff, it just came crashing down in a halt following 2018.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see. This is to be continued with that. And also, too, want to give a quick shout out to Bill Safety Damar Hamlin, of course. In last January, earlier this year, he went into cardiac arrest after during their Monday night game, Bill's Monday night game against Cincinnati. He completed his first full padded practice since that. So want to give that great, we talked about some of the great job that the Bills training staff did. You saw them at the SPs, and still a lot of emotion there. And I think, look, he's actually a pretty solid safety. I think people don't realize that he has he also returns punts too. So he's definitely a dual purpose guy. And I think it was great to see. He looked great, going out there. And I know there was a lot of cheers at that facility. So just want to give a quick shout out to him and to the Bills. And, hopefully, this will be maybe a great comeback for him.
Yeah, we're all rooting for that great young man to continue his football career. It was a tragedy what happened to him, like you mentioned last season. But hopefully this is the start of a great end to a great story in his journey back to playing full time in the NFL.
All right, so hopefully we'll keep as his comeback starts right now as we speak. So we'll keep you guys updated on that. So really quick break. We're gonna take a break right now. We're past the break, so we're gonna go ahead and take it right now. We're gonna switch gears here, talk a little bit of Diamond talk, some baseball, as the Cubs take 3 out of 4, including a catch that probably saved what they were gonna. They probably answered what they were gonna do as far as the Sox. I mean, there might be more guys are going to be traded. So we'll talk more about that. And also, other baseball stuff coming up next, like Kenny McGee, Sidney Brown, Second City Sports on Sports Hill Chicago. Diamond Talk coming up right after this.
This year, my mom got me the perfect bag for back to school.
These colorful binders help me stay organized.
These headphones are just what I need for studying.
These new sneakers are just what I needed for the new year.
This jacket is a real must-have.
My parents got me the skateboard I wanted. It's pretty cool.
These scissors really come in handy in art class. These colored pencils, too.
These new socks, they can be a real lifesaver.
I finally got my own phone to stay in touch with my mom.
Trisha's having a sleepover tonight. Can I go?
I wonder about Lucy's friends. What should I say? I know you're only 10, but one of these days a friend will offer you a drink. And alcohol at your age can lead to so many things. None of them good.
So can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me
I
something.
finished my homework.
Bigger promise. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, "No thanks, not my thing."
Mom.
I promise you. Your real friends won't care. Deal?
Sure.
Really?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov, a public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
Hey, this is Dr. J, and I listen to Sean and Maya in the morning.
Welcome back to Second City Sports. This is Monday edition, the last one for the month of July. We're live in the living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. That's Lakina. I'm Sid. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter, X, and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
And you follow my Keenan McGee on the Twitter, X, Keenan McGee on the IG.
And we have less than 90 minutes left of this extravaganza we call a Sports Talk Radio Show. You have any questions or comments for us, you can always hit us up in the comment section at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in those questions or comments in the comments section. Lakina will get them up on the screen for you.
All right, Sid, let's talk some diamond. Let's talk some baseball as we'll start with the good. The Cubs, win 3 out of 4 against the Cardinals, including one game on Friday that I have to say, I think that catch by Mike Tomlin. Remember, this is not the first time he's done this. He robbed Alec Burleson. Of course, if he had not, I wish we had that on our cue because just between his catch and the call by Buxiami and Jim DeSage, JD, I think was just masterful. It was just I saw it about a dozen times over the weekend. It was just amazing. But remember, it's not the first time Tom has done this. Remember, a couple of years back when he was with the Giants, he robbed Albert Pujols, which would have been a walk-off home run. But a different situation. But in this case here, that definitely had that gone out, they would split the series with the Cardinals, and also too that probably would have been they probably would have been buyers. Now they're going to be sellers. They're, as of recorded, they're now 4 back of Cincy. They play Cincy starting tomorrow, and I think like we've been saying, the NL Central's tonight I should say they actually start their series tonight over at Wrigley. This is definitely that definitely changed sort of the scope of what Jed Hoyer and Connor Hawks were going to do. So 23 out of 4. I mean, I know they lost a tough one yesterday. They couldn't get their offense going. Look, they had won 7 in a row. Whatever. Look, they did what they're supposed to do in that little soft part of schedule. Now we're going to see if this team can win the Central, because I think no one's pulling away from that division. They're only 4 games back. They play Cincy starting tonight at Wrigley. I think this is this will answer our questions of whether or not they could be really true contenders in that division.
We talk about the superstars on this team, the big names that are expected to step up with Dansby Swanson, Ian Happ, Nico Horner, and some of the other veterans like Marcus Stroman and Cody Bellinger. But we don't talk enough about the supporting guys like Trey Mancini with his bat. Don't put him in the field ever again. And also, you talk about Patrick Wisdom, same thing. Put his bat in the lineup, but not on the field. And Christopher Morel, who's their utility guy, as manager David Ross trying to find a position for him. But Mike Tomlin, we talked about him early in the season, Lakina, when Cody Bellinger was out with the injury for almost a whole month and back in early May. And he filled in and did very well, more with his glove than with his bat. But he was one of those guys that kind of held it together when the Cubs were going through their struggles late May into early June. offensively. His defense, especially, he came up with a few hits, but his defense what kept him on the roster. And now you're looking at this whole spectrum, as you mentioned, Lakina, they had a great last 2 weeks, actually a great start to the second half of the season following the All-Star break. As I said 2 weeks ago, exactly 2 weeks ago on this show, they need to go on a great streak. They did that with starting with their home schedule, winning 5 out of 7. Last week they took 2 from the White Sox, and they usually mentioned they take 3 out of 4 in St. Louis and finished the year 8-5 against those ugly Cardinals. So they did what they have to do. They have no choice but to be buyers now. I know the reports came out yesterday before the game. They were saying that Cody Bellinger is off the market now, that the Cubs won't trade him. Hopefully that is true. I don't know what's going on with Marcus Stroman, or are they still dangling him out there? But we'll see what happens between them now and tomorrow night's deadline at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. So it looks like the Cubs are starting to move in the direction of being buyers. Will they get what they want? I don't know, but they still need another bat, preferably who can play third base full time, and you definitely need another bullpen arm. I know Albert Alzolay has done a great job closing games from these last few weeks, but you still need another bullpen arm to help him out.
At least in the middle relief guy too.
Yes.
So yeah, then we'll see if they can, there are guys out there on the market. Well, we'll talk about that with our buddy Vince in a second, but after the break. But yeah, I think he definitely there's definitely a lot of guys out there that can kind of fill that void, make a little minor moves here and there. They won't have to give up a lot of their top guys that they do, in their farm system right now. So if you're the Cubs, I mean, you're kind of like, okay, let's see if we can kind of like make a few minor moves to kind of like get them into that, spectrum of, okay, let's, pull a little, put somebody in the middle relief and see if they can, get some, with that division. Because like I said, that division is very doable. So I know some people are that freaks people out. Some Cubs fans out. I know some folks were like, I don't know if they want that, but look, they can't help it. The division is not very good. So, it is what it is. But yeah, we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, I don't know if I brought this question up to you, Lakina, last week. If I did, I forgot, but I'll bring it up now. If you're a Cubs fan, between now and tomorrow night, early evening, I should say, when the trade deadline ends, let's just say if they did sell off Cody Bellinger and Marcus Stroman, looks like it's not going to happen now. I think it is pretty much safe to say. But if they would have sold those guys off and you did what you just did for the last 2 weeks, if you were a Cubs fan, would you take that personally as a middle finger from the front office to you as a fan? Because I forgot who we had on the last couple of weeks. I think it was James Naveau. I'm not sure. I think it was James Naveau last Friday. He said that spent close to $300 million in free agency money, and the Cubs management still wants to sell at the trade deadline. You doing what you just did for the last 2 weeks. If you're a Cubs fan, you would take that personally as a personal middle finger from the front office to you, and paying all that money that you pay for those tickets. You would be up pretty much.
Yeah, you probably would be feeling a little bit upset. I think you probably would take that personally if you're a Cubs fan.
Apologies for the technical difficulties. Hopefully, Lakina McGee will rejoin us here in a second. As you're listening to Second City Sports right here in Sports Zone Chicago, Sid the Kid here riding solo with you as we continue to talk baseball. Just finishing up on my thoughts on the Chicago Cubs. The Cubs did what they had to do the last 2 weeks and beating St. Louis twice in a series, sweeping the White Sox in a 2-game series. They did what they had to do, forcing management's hand to make a move at the trade deadline between now and tomorrow night. And they put themselves in a perfect position as they have a tough 4-game series against the Cincinnati Reds starting tonight. And just a couple of numbers to pass along to you guys as Lakina rejoins us. The Cubs finished the year against St. Louis with an 8-5 record and with a plus 20 run differential, 68-48. The Cubs batted .275 against the Redbirds. And Ian Happ and Dansby Swanson combined for 5 home runs against the St. Louis Cardinals. Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado, their 2 big boppers, they had 0 home runs against the Cubs this season.
Yeah, and I think that's what you want to do, especially with your rivals. So, you don't have to worry about having to play them anymore. So, that's
Mm-hmm.
that you gotta be feeling pretty good if you're a Colts fan. You win, the series there. So that's gonna be, you don't have to worry about that. Now, you do have to worry about since you got some more games against Cincy and Milwaukee in these, next few weeks. So we're going to the dog days here. So it's gonna be very interesting to see what this team does. But yeah, look, they got a tough one tonight. Look, we're gonna find out if the Cubs are for real, and that can definitely be a contender. Look, we'll talk about what they did in a second. We'll talk about Cincinnati, but I feel like I think they're right there in that division. I think they're 4 back. It's still very doable. They would look pretty bad if they had. I'm talking about the Cubs had they had sold. Yeah, could have been. Yes, could it be because they had the quote unquote soft part of their schedule. Look, you can't help but who you play. You only got to play who you play in their schedule. So, but they did what they're supposed to do. They swept the two gamer at G-rate against the Sox. They won 3 out of 4 at St. Louis against the Cardinals. Look, you did what you're supposed to do. So, look, you're in it. So, let's try to win this division and see where it goes from here. Look, once you're in, anything can happen. Look, we saw what happened with the Phillies last year. The last team to get in, they end up going all the way to the World Series. So, look, we've seen where things happen. So, let's give them a little bit of a break. But let's go to the flip side here. Let's see sports on Sports Social Chicago. Like Keenan McGee, Cindy Brown with you, and we'll talk more about the moves and stuff with Vince coming up at the top. But the fact that they split their series against the Guardians, yay. And then, we were hearing rumors that maybe Dylan Cease might be on the move. I know there have been some I know the Dodgers might be interested in him, and the Rays I saw as well with Mr. Cease also too. I guess Eloy's names be flown around as well. Leaving the off the field stuff aside, because there's really not much to talk about there. But what do you think about the Sox and then all the stuff that all the other more trade rumors are coming out?
First of all, I'll focus it on the field. Congratulations to Mike Clevenger. Yay! I was there on Saturday. He actually pitched well. And he actually, the White Sox actually scored some runs for once instead of trying to come back to win a game. And congratulations to Tim Anderson for hitting his first home run of the year. He damn near cried and had a celebration in the dugout. If you haven't hit a home run for a whole calendar year, I would celebrate too. But there are some good signs. That the White Sox could be a good team going forward. Absolutely not for this year, but Jake Berger, as bad as been on fire as well. He had a deciding home run on Friday night's game against the Guardians, which helped the Sox win that one to break that losing streak from Friday. But yesterday, Michael Kopech, he was very inconsistent once again, leaving some gophers right in the middle of the play. Jose Ramirez took him deep. A couple of other guys took him deep as well. But the question for the White Sox going forward, would you move Michael Kopech to the bullpen? I heard some people say move him as a closer. No, I'm against that. But the main thing about Michael Kopech is consistency. You thought that he turned it around in early May, in the early part of May, but since the middle part of June, he's gone back to being the bad Michael Kopech, taking his mental problems out of it. I think part of it is that, but I think mostly his mechanics as well. He was trusting his stuff early on in the season, but lately he hasn't trusted his stuff, and it seems like that every little thing that happens to him, we saw this part of it last year as well, as he became a starter. Every little thing that happens to him that doesn't go his way, he lets it get to him, and it ruins his whole start. And that's not good if you're trying to be an established major league pitcher.
Yeah, I think that's what you want to do, I guess, in that sense. But look, I think Kopech, is one of those guys that you thought that maybe he was starting to turn around, but that ended up not being the case. So you saw what happened yesterday, and look, I think for me, I don't know. I mean, I think maybe the bullpen might be best for him. We'll have to wait and see, but. This whole thing with what happened yesterday, you saw those hits that the Guardians gave up. Jose Ramirez took him deep. I don't want to say that that he's been a bust. I'm talking about Kopech, but you wonder maybe he might for his own saying, I guess to kind of save his career, maybe going to the bullpen might be the way to go. But I don't know. But look, I mean, yeah, the Sox they show a little bit of a fight, but I think for me, I'm just counting the days to the end of the season. They play Texas starting tomorrow in Arlington, so I'm kind of like, okay, whatever. Who else is gonna get moved? I mean, that for me, I think that's what I'm focusing on right now. And I know that they still some among the organization feel that maybe they may still have a shot to compete next year for what, third place in the division. Because I think, look, yeah, they've got some nice pickups and nice prospects, but I'm at that point where I'm kind of like, I'm in sort of like, this year is a bust. I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just get the rest of the season over with, and let's just kind of still got about 55 games left. But I'll we'll just count the days till the end of the season, because I want to talk about the rest of what's happening in baseball. And I think for me, I think, look, this pretty much kind of really the main thing here for me this weekend was the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays, they took 2 out of 3 from the Angels, and they lost a tough one. They lost a tough one, I should say, 3-2. But they kind of sort of showed you that they won 2 out of 3. They got to Lucas Giolito at his first start with the Angels. They did acquire Hicks from the Cardinals. A guy that Jordan Hicks, I should say, and a guy we've talked about, a veteran. He's not a veteran; he's like 27, but he's a young middle reliever. That's who they need, and they need more pitching. So they're only 5.5 back in the AL East. So I think for me, I think the Blue Jays, I'm sure they're going to make some more moves, in the next day or two. So I think this is what I'm focusing on too, among the other things that are happening before the trade deadline.
Yeah, as you mentioned, the Angels stopped the potential sweep of the Blue Jays yesterday, winning 3-2 in 10 innings. I did watch that first game on Friday. Lakina, as you mentioned, it was Lucas Giolito's debut in the Angels uniform. He only pitched 73 pitches. They had him on the Angels had him on the pitch count. He actually matched Kevin Gausman, who had 9 strikeouts through 5 innings in that game on Friday. Giolito didn't do too bad, but he left a couple of mistakes at the plate, and Toronto was able to take advantage of it, including Danny Jansen's 2-run homer, which kind of busted it wide open for the Jays as they won their opener last Friday 4-1. I think Lucas Giolito will help the Angels. As we all know that he can eat up innings. I think Ronaldo Lopez can help the Angels as well, come as a setup man on the middle relief, and more so of a middle relief coming out of their bullpen. The Angels management is telling Ohtani that they're going for it, because remember they picked up C.J. Cron yesterday, coming off that bench. I know they're trying to get some guys back off the injury list, including Mike Trout. So the Angels look good on paper, but can they get it together enough to make it a playoff push? It's going to be very tough, especially in the AL West division, which they're in right now.
That's going to be a tough one too, especially the AL wild card is probably going to be but they're still right there, I guess, in the West, but they're going to jump over both the Astros and the Rangers. So we'll see what happens. They actually all do play each other within the next 6 weeks. So going to be interesting to see, going to be a little bit of a slugfest in that division. So we'll see what happens there. Now the Dodgers lose 2 out of 3 to the Reds. An interesting game on Saturday. Max Muncy, we talked about Bellinger, but Muncy had 2 home runs in that Saturday game, and that's that was actually those were the only hits in that 3-2 win on Saturday, and he actually became the first Dodgers player since this RBI actually became a stat night all the way back in 1920 to record all the teams' hits and driving all the teams' runs. We only had 2 hits, and they ended up winning that game. So, but unfortunately, they were shut out last night. And of course, Eli De La Cruz, struck again, 4 hits on Sunday, and he's the 3rd Reds player since 1900 to record that with 3 games with 4 hits at 20 years old, 21 or younger. So I think for me, I think the Reds, you win 2 out of 3 against the Dodgers. I mean that's huge, but I think this is sort of one of those days where they're acclimating more, guys. They've been very busy before the trade deadline. I'm sure they're going to have more trades coming up as well. Talk about the Dodgers, and the Reds were able to kind of take advantage of that. So, but for me, I think, look, I'm not sold on the Reds just yet. Hey, look, you're going to be playing the Cubs, so prove me wrong. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens here, and that's NL Central.
Yeah, the Reds finally decided to wake up in terms of that bats. We'll see what they do between now and tomorrow night at 5 o'clock as far as getting a veteran starting pitcher there. Like you mentioned for the Dodgers, Joe Kelly made his debut on Saturday. Actually looked pretty good. We'll see when Lance Lynn will make his first start as a new member of the Los Angeles Dodgers after being acquired by the White Sox. But as you mentioned, Lakina, Cincinnati needed to get back on track. It's a huge series win on the road over the weekend. As you mentioned, they took advantage of the new Dodgers players that's coming in and out of the lineup. They'll need to heat up those bats again as they'll take on the Cubs on the road starting tonight.
That'll be interesting to see what happens with that. Now, Baltimore, they take 2 out of 3 from the Yankees, including a great pitchers duel on Friday. Anthony Santander got his first walk-off, so that was a pretty cool moment there back in downtown Baltimore. They dominated the Yankees in the rubber match yesterday, 9-3, beating them. And look, including Adam Frazier's 3-run home run that kind of helped get things rolling for the Orioles. And look, it'll be to see if they start getting a little bit busy. I mean, they need, they can all use a middle reliever. They can always use another bat. So we'll see what the Orioles do at the trade deadline, between these next 24 hours.
I know we run up against it here. Real quick, I was watching MLB Central this morning on MLB Network. Mark DeRosa said this about 3 weeks ago, and he said it again on the show today. Don't be surprised if the Baltimore Orioles trying to get Justin Verlander from the New York Mets. The Mets traded Max Scherzer to the Texas Rangers. We'll get more into it with our guests coming up in the next hour. But if you're Baltimore, is it worth the mortgaging part of your future to get Verlander? Especially at the salary that he makes. If you think it's worth it, go get him, because he'll definitely help that young Baltimore pitching rotation, Lakina. He'll definitely help them because they already have a dominant lineup. But if you get a veteran like Verlander in there, they'll take you a long way. You saw what they did with the Astros when they won the World Series back in 2017.
It'll be interesting to see what he does with that, because I feel like, again, we'll talk about the Scherzer trade for me to say coming up with events in a couple of minutes. But yeah, I kind of feel like I think the Mets are going to be sellers, and look, it'll be interesting to see if Verlander does end up going to Baltimore. I think that would be a good spot for me. He can help that veteran, be a veteran to that young pitching staff over there in Baltimore. So should definitely be interesting to see what happens with that. Now, real quick with the scheduling and stuff, I know we're up against it because we want to get our buddy Vince on. Philadelphia, Miami, these are a series that starts tonight. Milwaukee and Washington, Tampa Bay and the Yankees. Of course, your Aaron Judge. You got to think it's going to take him a few games to kind of get back. He has a rhythm, folks. He hasn't played in 2 months, so we'll just see how that's going to shake out. Looking forward to this series in the AL East. You got the Orioles and the Blue Jays. That should be a fun series. It's been always fun when those two teams play each other. The Angels and in Atlanta, that should be an interesting series as they start that. And of course, a big one here for the Cubs as they face the Reds at Wrigley starting tonight.
Yeah, and finish out the rest of the schedule for tonight and tomorrow. We have Cleveland at Houston, San Diego at Colorado, Boston at Lakina, Seattle Mariners, and the Diamondbacks and the Arizona Diamondbacks taking on the San Francisco Giants there. And the rest of the series that starts tomorrow, Tuesday, we will have Detroit at Pittsburgh, and we'll have Minnesota at St. Louis, and the New York Mets at Kansas City to take on the Royals, and of course Oakland and Los Angeles to take on the Dodgers. Also, this the other series there will start tomorrow. So that's your MLB schedule for the start of this week.
Of course, the game 2 of that Rays Yankee series will be part of Tuesday game of the week on TBS at 6:05 tomorrow.
All right. Stay tuned for more sports and more fun as Second City Sports continues with our new guest, Mr. Vinnie Parise from Fansided and the Barroom Network. You're listening to Sports Zone Chicago.
No, I don't know, though. I'm scared.
Do you know that you're in my lane?
No, not at all.
Are you not paying attention? Are you texting?
I was just checking in with my mom. I was telling her that I thought we'd be home by 6.
It's okay. There's enough time. Just pay attention.
I'm not even halfway through my text. There's no way. I'm not even going to look up. My babies are in the car. You have to pay attention. It's just supposed to be a quick text. I'm so sorry.
Hi, I'm Tom Brady, the director of DODEA. September is National Suicide Prevention and Awareness Month. The simple act of reaching out and caring for those in our communities is something we all can do. Just being there for someone you care about can be a tremendous first step in getting them access to confidential resources and support that they need. It only takes one person and one small act and 1 minute to make a difference. Let's make a difference.
Move it!
Many will hear the calling. Few will earn the title. United States Marine. The few, the proud, the Marines.
Welcome back to hour number 2 of Second City Sports, the Monday edition, right here on Sports Zone Chicago. I'm Sid. That's Lakina. You can follow yours surely on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. SIDKID80.
You can follow me at Keenan McGee on the Twitter and at Keenan again on IG.
We have less than an hour left of this extravaganza we call a Sports Talk Radio Show. If you have any questions or comments, especially for our next guest, you can go to Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in your questions or comments in the comments section. Lakina will get them up on the screen for you. All right, Lakina, let's not waste any time. You heard this young man on the Sports Zone Chicago network before via Sean and Maya in the morning. We welcome him as a first-time guest on this show, Second City Sports. You can read his work on Fansided.com. You can hear his podcast with our good buddy Joe Mandel on the Barroom Network. You can follow him on the Twitter X at Vinnie Parise. Once again, at Vinnie Parise. Let's welcome him into Second City Sports, Mr. Vinnie Parise. Vinnie, welcome to our show. How are you, my man?
Vinnie and Lakina, thank you very much for having me. It's my pleasure to be on the show today. How are you guys?
Yeah, we're doing great. How about yourself?
Doing very good, very good. Happy to be here.
Yeah, we'll get into the a little bit of the football. I know you talk about that as well with the Chicago Bears. We'll get into that later on in this interview. But let's start out with the White Sox. I was there yesterday and Saturday. Of course, that team looks very different. Of course, the trades came through and heavy. They may or may not be done yet. We still have time between now and tomorrow night at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time as the trade deadline will come to the close then. But what did you think about the moves so far with Lucas Giolito, Lance Lynn, and Kendall Graveman and Joe Kelly all being gone?
Well, of course, the moves make me really sad, right? You know, when this whole thing started back in 2016, when they traded Chris Sale to the Red Sox and they started the rebuild, right? They got Moncada and Kopech plus a couple other prospects in return. I was like, all right, the White Sox haven't done this in a long time. You know, they've been bad for a long time, but they haven't really tore it completely down. You know, we're always looking at third, fourth place. The White Sox very rarely ever come in dead last, right? Well, they were preparing for dead last for a couple years, and they were. And then all of a sudden it starts to build up, and it looks like the rebuild's coming according to plan. And then they really don't do what they need to do to, you know, take advantage of the core that they built, the young core. And now here we are all these years later. It is a failure. And so when I think about it from that point of view, the trades make me sad. Giolito's gone. He was supposed to be the ace of a staff that made multiple deep playoff runs. You hope at least gets to the World Series one time. They don't even win a playoff round a single time. And I loved Lance Lynn. I thought he was the definition of a Chicago White Sox player. And, all the other pitching that surrounded them that went in those trades, sad to see him go. But if you have to look on the bright side, there are a couple nice prospects that came back in return. So, they got the Angels number 2 and 3 prospects. Half of their top 10 in terms of their minor league prospect pool has been upgraded in the last, I don't know how many days it's been now since the Giolito trade, 6 days or whatever. It's a positive from that point of view, but now we have to think, like, can the White Sox develop these guys and take advantage of the talent that they have? They haven't been able to do that in the last 5 or 6 years outside of a handful of players. So it makes me sad. I like the return a little bit if they have to make these trades, but it's all bittersweet to me.
Now, what about some of the various rumors that we've heard? We've heard within like the last, I guess, 24 hours that guys like Dylan Cease and Luis Robert Jr. are also, the Sox are actually listening to those, trade offers between those two players. Do you think one or both of them, become traded before tomorrow?
Before I went to sleep last night, I would have said I would be shocked if they traded Luis Robert Jr. or Dylan Cease, because I do believe, although they are kind of in the middle of a rebuild, they traded all these pitchers for prospects. That's the definition of starting a rebuild. Dylan Cease and Luis Robert Jr. aren't old players. You can rebuild around them. They're as good as adding 2 extremely good prospects. So the thing with Cease is he's got a couple years left of control. White Sox fans like to bring up the fact that he's a Scott Boras client, and he's an agent that hasn't worked very well with the White Sox in the last 10 years or so. But there have been Scott Boras clients to sign with the White Sox. People remember Dallas Keuchel. He was one of the big free agents a couple years ago. It worked out for 1 year. It's not Scott Boras' fault that Keuchel started to, be a bad pitcher from that point on. But, it's one of those things, like, you can get Dylan Cease extended. You can have Luis Robert Jr. for the long haul. If somebody offers them 2 top 100 prospects and those 2 top 100 prospects both happen to be in the top 20, then yeah, I would consider it. But it would have to be a hefty return for me personally to want to see Cease or Robert go.
I want to ask you, Vinnie, about realistically the trade value of these 3 guys: Eloy Jimenez, Tim Anderson, and I said this guy's name on our show on Friday, Yasmani Grandal. I think you get a lower level prospect for him. He could be an extra bet for a contending playoff team. But what's the true value of those 3 players that I just mentioned, assuming they get moved tomorrow, if they get moved?
For me, Grandal could get DFA'd if he's not traded by the trade deadline. I mean, that's just kind of the way the White Sox could handle it, kind of like how Elvis Andrus was handled last year by the A's, right? They tried to get something for him, do right by him by sending him to a team that would want him and contend with him. And then it ended up not happening. So they DFA'd him so he could sign with a new team. It wouldn't shock me if it were the case for Grandal at the end of the season. So if they were to trade him, I can't imagine them getting anything more than like a late teens, early 20s type of prospect for a team. Like, by that, I mean like a team's number 19 prospect or number 23 prospect, something like that could or could not end up being a difference maker for the White Sox. The big key would be that contract being off the books for the rest of the season. Not that it really matters, because he's going to be an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year anyway. But as far as Eloy, I still believe that Eloy Jimenez can be a game-changing bat. And his injuries and lackluster defense have kind of lowered his value a little bit. So unless a team offers you something that is really crazy, I would keep Eloy kind of a tick below Robert Jr. and Cease. Like, he's certainly not untouchable. Nobody should be untouchable. But I'd be very hesitant to trade a bat like that at the start of this, little retool, because he's young, he can hit big, and all that sort of stuff. And then who was the third player you asked? It was Eloy.
Tim Anderson.
Tim Anderson.
TA. Yep.
TA is a guy I root for so hard. I was so happy to see him hit his first home run of the season a couple nights ago. There was just some pure emotion there, some issues off the field that he's been dealing with, and it's been a tough year for him. A change of scenery would be good for Tim Anderson. I don't want to see him go. I would love for the White Sox to say, you know what? We are going to try and be a competitive team in 2024. We're going to keep our guy. He's going to be healthy coming into next season. He's going to have a fresh mindset. It would have to be a similar return for Eloy for me to move Tim Anderson. They can't just trade him just to trade him. These are guys who have been the faces of the franchise for the last half decade. You don't just move them for these, middle of the pack prospects, because those guys aren't necessarily guaranteed to come up. Even the high top flight prospects aren't a guarantee to come up and make an impact at the major league level. So I'd be very careful about trading Anderson and Eloy Jimenez. But as far as Grandal, trade him for whatever you can get.
Let's talk about the rest of the scope of MLB, Vinny. And, we talked about right before you came on. You might have been listening to us when we were talking about Justin Verlander. He's a new big name that might be moving around. We talked about maybe the Orioles, maybe the Rays, some other teams that are kind of been floating around as perhaps, he said that after his start yesterday that he is open to being traded. Of course, his buddy Scherzer got traded to the Rangers. So what do you think Verlander's going to go if he does get moved?
There are probably 6 or 7 teams that I could legitimately see buying starting pitching before the trade deadline tomorrow at 5:00. And obviously the ones you named, like the Rays and the Orioles, I would love to see a small market team like that come up and be like, hey, we're getting Justin Verlander. Could I see a Cubs or a Houston Astros or a Los Angeles Dodgers go for a guy like that? The Atlanta Braves make a ton of sense for Verlander. I think they're the best team in baseball right now. They're the only true team in the National League where you're like, that's an elite team. And then if they somehow get bounced in the first round, any other National League team could legitimately go to the World Series if they make it to the dance. And that's why teams like the Cubs and the Marlins are probably going to end up buying, because they could see that if the Braves get bounced, it's anybody's game if you make the playoffs. And so yes, I see Verlander going to a team like that. I would be stunned to see the Mets keep him, because although Uncle Steve Cohen loves to spend lots of money and be over the luxury tax and buy free agents, you think shedding some money so they can try to maybe go for something else this upcoming offseason, so they can try and right the wrong of this season, talking about the Mets, they might move Verlander. And we've seen him move before and make immediate impacts with a new team. He won 2 World Series titles with the Houston Astros. A little surprising that the Mets are where they are at this point, trading Scherzer, trading Verlander. But I would like to see personally Verlander end up with a team like the Orioles or the Rays, a team who's never, if they trade for like a super duper star like that, who cares that he's in his late 30s? Like, you are a legitimate World Series contender, Rays and Orioles. If that were the ALCS, I wouldn't be shocked at all. And I'd love to see a Verlander matchup involved in one of those games.
Vinnie Parise from Fansided and the Barroom Network is hanging out with us here on the Monday edition of Second City Sports. We're live in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. Sid Lakina hanging out here with us. We talk baseball. Vinnie, let's go to the dreaded north side of the Chicago Cubs. They have had a great run since the All-Star break. They take 3 and 4 from St. Louis, including that great catch by Mike Tomlin on Friday night. And now they're in a position where they can legitimately make a move to take over the NL Central. They still got to hop over 2 teams. I'm talking about Cincinnati and Milwaukee. But realistically, what do you think the Cubs, i.e. Jay Hoyer and Carter Hawkins, what do you think they'll do between now and tomorrow night's trade deadline?
So I think tonight's game between the Cubs and the Reds is perhaps the most important game of the entire season. If they win that game, they're 3 games out of first place in the NL Central Division. That is very, very attainable, especially with tons of games against the Brew Crew and the Reds to go down the stretch. If they lose, they're 5 out. And if you're 5 games out going into the trade deadline, that's a different story. Now, do I think they trade Bellinger? I don't, because then it sends a message that I can't really get behind. Like, if you're a team, especially a team like the Cubs, you should be trying to win. Unless you're like in a legitimate full-blown rebuild like they were in 2012 and 2013. You got to be putting your best foot forward. You got to make free agents say, hey, I want to go play for the Cubs. Why would Ohtani come sign with the Cubs if he knows that every time the Cubs ink a good player to a 1-year deal, they're just going to trade him in August, regardless of where they are in the standings? Ohtani wouldn't appreciate seeing something like that. So I think it sends a good message to keep Bellinger and, maybe add a starting pitcher before the trade deadline. I do think tonight's game is going to be incredibly important, but the Cubs, in a positive way, the players have forced Jed Hoyer's hand. And I know it's the Nationals and the Cardinals and the White Sox who they beat since the All-Star break. But Major League Baseball teams are Major League Baseball teams. The Oakland A's went on a 7-game winning streak back earlier in the season. Like, it's Major League Baseball for a reason. And, who's to say they can't carry that momentum into a series with the Cincinnati Reds? I know they got the White Sox again later in August. There are a couple other good teams mixed in there, but still, the Cubs they have a solid roster. I like most of their batting order. And then their rotation, if they added a Verlander, or if they went out and got Blake Snell from the San Diego Padres, I think he'd probably be their game one starter if they ended up making the playoffs. So, the Jed Hoyer has some interesting decisions to make. I don't think there's necessarily a wrong answer here, because if they trade Bellinger and barely miss the playoffs, it won't send that good of a message, but at least, they'll be able to rally around whoever they acquire in the trade and talk people into those. And then if they do buy or stay pretty stagnant and just miss the playoffs, I don't think that's going to kill any momentum that they have going into 2024, when I could see the Cubs being a pretty good team.
And nor shouldn't. I think I'm glad you said that, Vinny. Now, the Padres are going to be very stubborn, and apparently they're not going to sell. So, stubborn they are. Now, let's talk about the Reds for a second. I mean, I don't think anybody thought that the Reds would be in this position right now, leading the Central as we're talking. But do you think that they make a little moves to kind of like go for it this year, or do you kind of like bring in a veteran guy like maybe a Verlander or someone like that? Do they? Yeah, I don't think they should mortgage their future. What do you think the Reds will do?
I wouldn't trade a single top 10 prospect if I were the Reds for like one of their top 10 prospects, but I also wouldn't consider myself a seller or staying stagnant either. If they can get a good starting pitcher to come in and help out for, the rest of the season, I do think getting into the playoffs, it has value for your future. And if the Reds can hang on to the NL Central Division, I think that can lead to like 3 or 4 of the next 6 division titles for them, just because of this one base year where the players on the team learned a lot and had this experience together. I mean, who doesn't love watching Ellie De La Cruz play baseball? I've never been more excited about a young player in baseball. Like, he's literally everything you want in an offensive player. He's fast, he's got power, he can hit, he can run, he's smart. And he loves winning and he loves competing. So I think the Reds are going to be a very fun team to watch for a long time. I would not mortgage the future. They were my prediction for Lucas Giolito. Dead wrong on that. Closest I came to getting that right was he did go to a team that wears the color red, but that doesn't count. It's one of those things where I just hope the Reds are smart and don't mess this up, because I do think them, the Cubs, and then kind of the shell of the Brew Crew. The Cardinals always find a way to rise above. I know they're having a hard year right now, but they're still the St. Louis Cardinals, and they'll get themselves back into contention again. The NL Central could be really fun for the next half decade if all these teams keep it up. I hope the Reds are really smart here. Add a starting pitcher, maybe a bullpen arm, but don't give up too many young pieces in order to do so.
Let's head over to American League West, Vinny. The Houston Astros, of course, they picked up one-time Astro from a few years ago, of course, former White Sox player Kendall Graveman to bolster up their bullpen. But do you think you mentioned Justin Verlander earlier, but do you think the Astros will pick up another starter before tomorrow night's trade deadline, or do you think they'll pick up another bat? Because that's how they got back in this race.
I do. I would be a little surprised if the Astros just did nothing. They kind of had a hard start to the season. Jose Abreu wasn't hitting. They had some guys injured. Altuve was banged up from the World Baseball Classic. But if I know the Houston Astros and what they've built in the last decade, it's that when October comes around, not a single team in the American League is going to want to match up with them in the first round, especially if they add a Verlander or a Snell or, a Dylan Cease if the White Sox go crazy. I don't think the Astros have the farm system for that. They're kind of hinging on their MLB roster right now. Mm-hmm. But, I really wouldn't pick against the Astros against any team in the American League playoffs right now. I really don't think I would. If the Astros played the Braves again in the World Series, I would be 0% surprised. Mm-hmm. And so if you're the Astros and you have people believing that, and I know they believe that in their front office, they have to go out and do something. So, and I know the Texas Rangers are having a marvelous season. I love what they've built. They've done what the White Sox should have did. They built this nice young core through a rebuild and a couple hundred lost seasons in a row. And then they went out and spent money on Corey Seager and Marcus Semien. And then they went out and got DeGrom, who is the number – besides Derrick Rose, I can't think of a professional athlete in my lifetime that I would take injuries away from if I could. because Jacob deGrom is just incredible and so fun to watch. So I hope that the Rangers, from a fan point of view, I hope the Rangers give the Astros hell. Nobody wants to see the Astros win again. But, I mean, they're that good, and it wouldn't shock me at all if they are aggressive between, over the next how many hours we got left? I'm not a math guy. 28 hours till the trade deadline?
Give or take, yeah. Give or take, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, they're going to be active. They're one of those teams, and if I were an Astros fan, I'd be bragging my face off because that team is just unreal.
Now, before we move on to football here, teams like the Blue Jays and we've seen what the Angels have done, and maybe the Giants might. I know they've made some moves already. Do you think either one of those teams could be sellers, and who could they vie for some of those guys like the Verlanders and those types of players? I know you talked about maybe going to a small market, but what about maybe a Toronto or someone like that, or the Mariners who are right there in the AL wild card?
Yeah, I wonder, is there a more exciting team to think about from the American League but possibly making it to the World Series than the Toronto Blue Jays? I think that team is just so stacked from top to bottom with pure talent, and it'd be nice to see it all come together once October rolls around. I like the Blue Jays in the playoffs too because they're the only team in baseball that has an entire country behind them. It's kind of like watching a World Cup game when the Blue Jays play against someone in the playoffs. You just got people in Vancouver, British Columbia are rooting for the Blue Jays. It's awesome. And so, yes, I could see them making a move. They added, was it Hicks yesterday?
Yes, Jordan Hicks.
And
yes.
So, they're just really going for it. And when you have a lineup that has studs like Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Bo Bichette and, Springer, and there's all sorts of good players all over the place. Is Springer injured right now? I don't even know if Springer's injured right now.
He's a little banged up. I know he got hurt yesterday during that series against the Angels.
But they just got tons of talent from top to bottom, and it's super fun to watch. So, yes, I could see the Blue Jays being amongst those teams. The Mariners, on the other hand, I've been a little disappointed with this season. I actually thought they would be right there with the Astros. They're doing what I thought they do what the Rangers are doing, kind of making the Astros pull their hair out going into the trade deadline and, be that competitive team. They're still a really good team, and I wish the White Sox were in the Mariners' position right now. But if they ended up selling off, I actually also wouldn't be all that surprised either. So I think the Rays and the Orioles, one's going to win the division and the other has the top wild card spot. I don't think either of them are losing it. So that means there are 4 teams for 2 wild card spots, basically. Or it might even be 6 teams within 2.5 games if you include the Yankees for those 2 last wild card spots. It's a really tough race. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Mariners do. They went all in not all in last year, but they made some big trades. And, they ended up getting the playoffs and doing well. But this time around, I'm not so certain that they will be as aggressive as a team like the Blue Jays.
We are heading down the home stretch with the guy Vinnie Parise from Fansided.com and the Barroom Network right here on Second City Sports. Sid Lakina hanging out with you live in living color here on Sports Zone Chicago. Let's turn the page over to football. Of course, the Chicago Bears they're predicted by some to be that surprise team in the NFC this year. Vinny, I want to ask you, besides Justin Fields, what else are you looking forward to in watching the 2023 Chicago Bears?
I'm interested to see how Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus handle a potential season that has some expectations. Every year there is a team that goes from last place to first place, and that's because the NFL by design has schedules designed for last place teams to play last place schedules. So the Bears are going to play all the teams that came in last place in the NFC last year, and that's going to end their extra game. The extra game against the AFC, that 17th game that they added a couple years ago, that is going to be against the last place team. So there's 4 or 5 games this season that are against teams that were in last place last year. The Green Bay Packers aren't going to be the same team that they were without Aaron Rodgers. I know they weren't great last year, but I can't see Jordan Love coming in and in year 1 replicating anything that Rodgers has done in the last half decade or more, way more. The Lions, I think, have a good roster, but until they prove otherwise, they're still the Detroit Lions in a lot of people's minds. I probably should lose that because they're probably going to prove a lot of people wrong this year. And then the Vikings are the Vikings. They could be a 10-win team. Kirk Cousins is a B-plus quarterback. I like the way he handles himself and plays the game. They could easily be a winning team too. But I look at the NFC and I'm like, okay, you got the Philadelphia Eagles and you got the San Francisco 49ers. Beyond those two teams, who are you locking into a playoff spot right now? Is it the Dallas Cowboys? No. Or is Danny Dimes going to repeat what he did last year with the New York Football Giants? I'm not sure. He might. Are the Vikings going to be right there again? I don't know. The NFC South might really be horrible. It wouldn't shock me if an 8 or 9 win team wins that division with Tom Brady being gone. And so I don't know. The NFC is wide open, and I'm interested to see how Eberflus and Poles go about it if they do start the season 3-1, or if they find a way to win a big game early on in the season that tells people like, hey, the Bears, they're going to make some noise this year. It's going to be interesting. I hope they start to have a winner's mentality going forward. That's what I'm looking forward to the most, besides watching Justin Fields, of course.
The whole thing with the Fields and with the defense and stuff like that, the pass rusher. I know we talked about it. We talked about I feel like the last 3 or 4 months. Do you see them? When do you see them perhaps maybe they're picking up a pass rusher? Will it be during training camp, or will it be as we get to the season? Are they doing that kind of like a wait and see mode to see how this defense does? What do you think?
I mean, I consider a pass rusher in the NFL the second most important position in all of football. You have to have a quarterback and you have to go get the other team's quarterback. If you don't, you're not going to be a truly elite Super Bowl contender for the most part. Every now and then you see a Nick Foles win a Super Bowl or something like that, but he was good enough in the playoffs, right? And the same thing applies to a edge rusher that is supposed to go out there and make the quarterback run for his life. You have 3 decent ones still left on the market. I know a lot of Bears fans like to talk about Yannick Ngakoue. I think he's outstanding and probably the number 1 guy I would choose. Justin Houston, if the Baltimore Ravens don't have a deal with him by now, I mean, anybody should be able to swoop in and get him at this point. And then I think Jadeveon Clowney still has value in this league. He could go out there, even if he's not necessarily the guy anymore, like the Pro Bowl type guy that he was early in his career. Or I remember he was supposed to be like Hall of Famer when he was with South Carolina, the number 1 pick too. But I mean, you go out and you get one of those guys, I think you have a chance to really make some noise on this defense. They're not going to be the 18 Bears or the 06 Bears or anything like that. I won't even mention the other great Bears defense because that's just funny. But I mean, it's one of those things like, why not? Why those guys, if one of them wants to play in Chicago, why wouldn't you come add them? Because then you have a foundation on defense that you could kind of rally around this year. And the offense is sure to score some points, I would hope. You just can't be a 3-win team against, and I don't think they're going to. But adding a guy like that would certainly help the defense. I'm all for it. I hope it happens within the, I think, when do practices start with full pads? I think it's tomorrow.
Wednesday.
Is it Wednesday?
Yeah.
And so by the time you get to there, it'd be awesome to have one of these guys in the fold full time. I really like Yannick Ngakoue. I think he fits what the Bears do perfectly.
And going back to the offense, Vinnie, of course, we talk about Justin Fields, but they traded for a number 1 wide receiver named DJ Moore. Of course, they have Chase Claypool, who they traded for a 2nd-round pick last year. What do you expect out of those 2 gentlemen this year, barring injury, of course?
If Darnell Mooney can stay healthy, I don't see how they don't form a top trio in the division. I'm trying to think of a better – I mean, Justin Jefferson is the best wide receiver in the NFC North, but is his number 2 and number 3 as good as a Mooney or a Claypool? I don't really know. Thielen, is he – I don't even know what's up with him.
Yeah, he's going with the Panthers now.
That's right.
Yeah.
He is with the Panthers now. So, I think this trio can be one of the better in the NFC North. So, yeah, why not? Everybody, they get on the Bears for trading that 2nd-round pick for Claypool. What was it, week 10 when they did that? Not even. And you don't know what they would have taken with that 2nd-round pick. Would they have been as effective in helping Justin Fields? Even if all Claypool does is make Justin Fields feel good about himself, he's a win on the roster in my book. So, I can't wait to see what becomes of his career, and hopefully this change of scenery helps him. He showed flashes of brilliance with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and what can I say about DJ Moore? He's awesome. So I think the wide receivers could make an impact. I can't remember the last time we came into the season talking about a trio of wide receivers. Maybe Brandon Marshall, Alshon Jeffrey, but they didn't even really have a true number 3 that year, did they? It was Martellus Bennett and Matt Forte was a tight end and running back. So a trio of wide receivers that we're talking about. It's not really a commonplace in Chicago Bears conversation. So I'm super excited about it.
All right, we're wrapping things up here with Vinnie Parise here on Second City Sports on Sports Social Chicago. Keenan McGee, Cindy Bro with you. Now let's go on to the ice and talk some hockey. Now, we did get a chance to talk about this. I'm talking about Sid and I, but Patrice Bergeron, one of the all-time greats in recent years, announced his retirement a few days ago, and he has a couple of gold medals under his belt for Canada. He went to the Stanley Cup final 3 times with the Bruins. He scored over 427 goals in 19 seasons. Good grief, he played 19 seasons. Good grief. But make you feel old. But yeah, so what are your best memories of Bergeron? And we know he's gonna be a first ballot Hall of Famer, but where do you measure him among we'll say in recent times? Maybe it might be a little hard to do it like all-time greats, but definitely in like the last 20-25 years.
Yeah, I certainly think he's the greatest two-way forward who ever lived, right? Like in terms of he's the best player in the history of the league to be good at offense, defense, special teams, everything involved with hockey. And, most other guys, they're really good at one thing and then they're okay at other things. Bergeron played in the Crosby-Ovechkin era, so it's best to compare him to, that group of players. Evgeny Malkin was the third best player of the Crosby-Ovechkin era. Then I would put Patrick Kane fourth, and then I'd probably put Patrice Bergeron fifth. So he's really, truly one of the elite Hall of Fame type talents of his era. The Bruins did so much winning because of his ability to do everything right. He never scored 50 goals or anything like that. He never had, 70 assists like some of the great playmakers in the league, but he would have 30 goals and 40 assists. But he would be plus 50 and face-off winning percentage close to 60%. And teams would have scored less than 10 goals against when he was on the ice. He's one of those. He was just a perfect hockey player. I always say when I have kids, I'm not having them watch highlights of Sidney Crosby or Alex. I mean, they could for fun. But when we're learning how to play the game, you're going to be watching Patrice Bergeron highlights because I literally think he was a perfect hockey player. And I'm super happy that he was able to have such a long, fruitful career. It's very decorated. He won the Selke Trophy for the league's top two-way forward 6 times, and that's an NHL record. I don't think that's going to be broken anytime soon. We have some young, really good defensive forwards that are capable of putting up 85 points in the NHL right now. That's how you win the Selke Trophy. I don't think any of them are going to win 6, right? If one wins 2, he'll be happy. So, shout out to Bergeron. He was an outstanding NHL player for a long time, and he's right up there with the greats of his era for sure.
Rocky Wirtz, Blackhawks chairman, suddenly passed away last week at the age of 70. What were your initial thoughts when the news came out, and what do you think his legacy will be since he's passed?
Yeah, so his legacy is going to be a complicated one because of some of the things that have happened in recent years with the Blackhawks organization and such, and that's always, a tough thing to think about. When it comes to his legacy as the owner of the Blackhawks, though, I do think people will remember the fact that when he did take over, the home games weren't on TV. Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane were both freshly about to make their rookie debuts. I think Toews was drafted and then he didn't play the following year, but then he made his rookie debut with Kane the following year in 2007. And basically since then, under his leadership, hiring John McDonough from the Cubs and, changing the way he gets there, and John McDonough arrives and they don't even have a person answering the phone for whatever business endeavors a professional sports franchise has to deal with. They had none of that. And they were probably out of, I don't know how many teams there are amongst the big 4 in the United States. It's 120 something teams. They were probably dead last in terms of relevance and success, both on and off the playing surface. Then Rock Wirtz came in and all these people were hired. Dale Talon was already in there and they had a core being built. He gave them permission to sign Marian Hossa, and they put in a development team that is able to turn Duncan Keith from a second-round pick into one of the best defensemen of all time. And Brent Seabrook was his perfect Robin to the Batman. And Jonathan Toews is basically a diet Bergeron. Patrick Kane's one of the best offensive players of all time. All of that happens because of the things that Rock Wirtz did as an owner. So we're sad to see him go. I know the Blackhawks are probably going to do a lot to honor him this season. And, I'm thinking of him and his family for sure.
All right, Vinny, thank you so much for joining us. This has been so much fun. We're definitely going to have you back with us. Where can people find you, read you, listen to you, all that other good stuff?
Absolutely. So I'm at Vinnie Parise on Twitter. I pretty much retweet and quote tweet or whatever you're calling it these days with, Elon taking over Twitter. I'm XYZing. Yeah. I'm ABCing on twitter.com at Vinnie Parise. I'm covering the trade deadline like crazy. A couple things for the White Sox and the Cubs going up here within a couple hours. And then, of course, Bears training camp going on, covering it all. The hockey season will be here before you know it. So all of that at fansided.com. And then, of course, the podcasts at the Barroom Network. So I appreciate you guys for having me on. And this was a complete blast. I loved it.
All right. Is your podcast on tonight with our buddy Joe Mandel?
Yes, it is. Tonight at 8 p.m. Central, okay. South Burbs Hitman. We have a trade deadline extravaganza. So looking forward to that as well.
All right, people support that. We'll support that. You tell our buddy Joe Mandel, a friend of the show, we said hello, and we'll definitely have him back on this program again. As Lakina said, we'll definitely have you back on this program again. So you keep pumping up that great content, and we'll, much continued success, and we'll talk to you down the road, okay?
Absolutely. Sydney, Lakina, thank you very much for having me. I look forward to talking to you guys again soon.
All right, thank
Same
you.
Here. Stay safe, Vinny.
You too.
All right.
All right, that was Vinnie Parise from Fansided and, of course, the Barroom Network as well. Sid, let's do a little bit stretching here. We got a lot to do still.
Yes.
We're gonna talk some more NFL, some sports media news, including some big potential news with the NBA broadcast teams. We'll talk more about that. Also, too, Old School TV Monday. We'll see what Sid has in store. It's Sid's turn this week, so looking forward to seeing what he's gonna be surprised to me as well, folks. So lots to do still. Lakina Mickey sitting around Second City Sports.
As always.
Second City Sports on Chicago. We wrap things up coming up right after this.
This year, my mom got me the perfect bag for back to school.
These colorful binders help me stay organized.
These headphones are just what I need for studying.
These new sneakers are just what I needed for the new year.
This jacket is a real must-have.
My parents got me the skateboard I wanted. It's pretty cool.
These scissors really come in handy in art class. These colored pencils, too.
These new socks, they can be a real lifesaver. I finally got my own phone to stay in touch with my mom.
Trisha's having a sleepover tonight. Can I go?
I wonder about Lucy's friends. What should I say? I know you're only 10, but one of these days a friend will offer you a drink. And alcohol at your age can lead to so many things. None of them good.
So can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me
I
something.
finished my homework.
Bigger promise. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, "No thanks, not my thing."
Mom.
I promise you, your real friends won't care. Deal?
Sure.
Really?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov, a public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
Hey, this is Dr. J, and I listen to Sean and Maya in the morning.
Welcome back to Second City Sports. We're on the last break of the show for today. Last break of the show for today. We have less than 20 minutes remaining of this extravaganza we call a sports talk radio show. Sid the Kid is me. Lakeem McGee is she. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter, X, and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. SIDKID80.
You follow me at Keenan McGee on the Twitter X and Keenan McGee on the IG.
We have less than 20 minutes left of this show. As I said, if you want to get those last minute questions or comments in, you can go to Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in those questions and comments in the comment section. Lakina will get them up on the screen for you. And just a daily reminder, you can also catch Sports Zone Chicago now available on Roku TV.
All right, Sid, where do you want to go first here? Because we got a lot to.
The NBA broadcast team. That's something I haven't heard yet. We heard whispers here and there with a few names, especially after the ESPN layoffs a few weeks ago. You said you had the latest on that.
Yeah, this is according to Andrew Marchand, of course, does a great job with the New York Post. And of course, he and Sports Business Journal John Oran do a great podcast. You can that's posted, every week. You can, catch that wherever you get your podcast. Now, he came out about a couple of hours ago, I guess, is according to what his sources are saying, that apparently Doris Burke is close to being promoted. She'll be the first female to call the NBA Finals in the history of the NBA. And also, too, here's a name that that we haven't heard in a while, especially on the broadcast from is Doc Rivers, that she could be working with. Him, it'll be her, Doris, Coach Rivers, and Mike Breen. That'll be the new number one team, while Mark Jackson could be promoted to the B team. So, what do you think about this latest news? Of course, nothing's official yet, but apparently this is what Mr. Andrew's been hearing. So, what do you think? What do you think?
Mama, there goes that man again, being demoted to the number 2 team. I think he's going to sound great with Mark Jones. I think that's going to be entertaining within itself. But the number 1 team is still respectable. You mentioned Mike Breen, one of the best top basketball TV voices in the NBA. Of course, he does a great job locally with the New York Knicks for MSG. Of course, Doris Burke has been around, has done great work for a long time. It's finally, I'm glad she's got her chance to get her doing as far as doing color commentary for the NBA Finals. I know she did a heck of a job sideline reporting, but she's more than that. And I'm glad she's getting an opportunity. Doc Rivers, will he? The question is, how long will he last? Will it be this season, next season? Who knows? Because I don't think he's really done with coaching unless he comes out right now and says so, which I don't think he will. I mean, that's just me personally, but it's a respectable number 1 team. Remember, he did this before locally with the San Antonio Spurs during that lockout season in '99. Of course, he took over the Orlando Magic. Of course, he did games with Al Michaels on ABC before he went to Sunday Night Football. And, of course, talking about Doc Rivers, got back into coaching again. So it's going to be a great transition for that number 1 team for ABC and ESPN. I think they'll do some great work, but I think the question is, how long will Doc Rivers stay? Will it be just for next season? Will it be beyond next season? We'll see. But in the short term, I think this is a great move for ESPN.
Yeah, he's only 61. He'll be 62 later in October. So that's not old, by an NBA coaching standard. So well, I don't know what that was, but it's not old.
Sorry.
It's not old by, we're doing this live, folks. See, it's not old by NBA coaching standards. So unless he comes out and says that, hey, I'm done coaching, I'm retiring, blah, blah, blah. I know he wants to get that taste from the Sixers job and that whole thing out of his mouth. So, he might put something. So, it's going to be interesting, though. But, yeah, I mean, look, I think there'll be a good tandem. And I think, should that be official, we probably won't know about it for probably maybe next month, I guess, with the next few weeks. But, of course, Mark Jackson, we'll see where he goes. If he does get, demoted, like, will this, be, saying adios, especially NBC gets some part of the NBA rights, coming up in the next couple of years. So that's lot to look out for too. A lot can happen. So this is gonna get very interesting. How the dominoes fall.
Yes, and as we talked about a few weeks ago too, with those layoffs from ESPN, Lakina, about some of those guys that got laid off. They covered the NBA, like Jalen Rose, Nick Friedel, and some of the other ones. So could they be waiting out for if NBC gets that deal in a couple of years? Because many of them could be great additions to the new NBA and NBC. Should that happen in a couple of years, that they get that part of that rights deal from the NBA in a couple of years.
Definitely something to watch out for as well. I think there was something else. I gotta look it up real quick. I think there was another some more TV news. Good Karma Brands is taking over a lot of the ESPN radio things. They've already taken over ESPN Milwaukee. Of course, we know here in Chicago they've taken over the advertising for ESPN here in Chicago. So they're actually going to be more nationally. So I think ESPN would kind of want to get out of the radio business. So Good Karma Brands will run the operations and sales for national ESPN radio, and the podcast as well. So this might give a little bit of a rejuvenation to that part of the ESPN, which has kind of been stagnant in the last 5 or 6 years, especially since Mike and Mike broke up.
And as you mentioned with the Good Karma Brands, they have done a great job running some of those ESPN radio stations locally. I don't know if they have ESPN New York yet. I had to look that up. But I know, like you mentioned, ESPN Milwaukee, they have the one here in Chicago. I believe they have the one in Los Angeles too, AM 710 ESPN. So those stations have really improved under their branding. So things can not only go up for ESPN with this new branding, but we'll see what they do with their lineup, because as we mentioned for the last few weeks, Freddie Coleman, I think Amber Wilson, Jay Williams have taken their turns doing that morning show. We'll see what happens come the fall, but I know this as well as you do, Lakina. Nothing is like live sports. There's a space for sports radio, sports talk shows still. I know it's branched out now thanks to what we do here on the internet and YouTube and podcasts and things of that nature. But I think it's still a place for live sports radio talk. You just have to repackage it in a different way and make it available to more people. Like I will just take both our local sports radio stations here in Chicago with 670 and of course ESPN 1000. Now, you can not only just listen to it on traditional radio, but you can listen to it on their apps. You can watch their shows live via Twitch and YouTube. If you're Mitch Rosen 670 Score, please get on YouTube Live, please. I know you're on Twitch, but please get on YouTube, please, like ESPN 1000 is doing. They're not just on Twitch Live, but they're on YouTube Live as well. So 670 Score, please find a way to get live on YouTube, just saying. But with that being said, you have more avenues for people to consume your product. I think Good Karma Brands has done that so far to this point. Let's see if they can do it nationally here for ESPN Radio.
Definitely need a little bit of a boost there. So it'll be interesting to see what's going to be that 5 to 9 a.m. Central Time, our time slot there, because you got a little bit of a hole there too. So we'll interested to see what they decide to do with that particular time slot. And they know that a lot of the affiliates here, especially here in Chicago, are too crazy about having a national show, at the beginning, especially with football season getting ready to start. So in a little bit. So that's going to be another thing that's going to be interesting to see what happens with that. Now, one show that will not be on ESPN Radio is the Pat McAfee show. There were some rumors that maybe that show would be simulcast on the ESPN TV or when it usually comes on or on ESPN Radio. It looks like that's not going to happen. So that's going to leave a little bit of a void there. So it'll be interesting to see what do they do. I mean, I know they're going to want to kind of like be someone who's going to be the face of that ESPN Radio show. Freddie Coleman, I think, is probably natural because he's the longest tenured guy there now. But he's been doing some college football. I'm sure he's going to be doing some college hoops too later this year. So. That's going to be the thing where it'll be interesting to see what they decide to do. But yeah, because they definitely need a little bit of a boost for them on the radio side for them.
Yeah, and one quick thing before we move on, as far as the Good Karma Brands company, ESPN nationally still has a lot of live broadcasts, as you just mentioned. We have football, both college and NFL coming up within the next month or so, a little bit over a month and a half or so. You still have the NBA, and you have to, which most TV stations for sure, and radio stations too. There's nothing like live sports broadcasting. That's where you make your most money. And I just want to see how Good Karma Brands can sell those those games nationally as far as advertising is concerned and get more people to listen. And of course, you have the baseball playoffs coming up in October as well, because every game's on nationally is on ESPN radio. So I want to see how the advertising package comes about, and how can I get the advertising and get the people to listen.
Yeah, so that's going to be we'll just see where that goes. It was the Second State Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. Lakina McGee, Cindy Brown with you. Colorado is the latest school that's on the move. They're moving from the Pac-12 back to the Big 12. The move will be official, I think, in the next year or two. So not really a big shocker, of course, with USC and UCLA going to the Big Ten next year. Colorado, this came out on Friday, but yeah, Colorado being the latest team to move, switch conferences, going back to the Big 12. And, look, I guess we realized that this is all about money and whatnot. Of course, San Diego State, who you thought that maybe, they may not go anywhere, but it looks like I'm sure the Pac-12 is going to court them to perhaps lead the Mountain West. So a lot... This conference musical chairs is just a pain, what. So what do you think?
Yeah, like I say, it is a pain in the neck, and it all comes down to the money, as you well know. At the end of the day, of course, remember the situation with San Diego saying, "Oh, we want to leave the Mountain West to go to the Pac-12." Not yet. So we're going back to the Mountain West. So we'll see what happens with that. Colorado's still trying to make moves. Of course, they got now head coach Deion Sanders there now as he's trying to rebuild that program back up. It's all about the almighty paper at the end of the day. As you know, well known, with the Big Ten getting their big media deal, which starts this year. Of course, the SEC, I believe, starting next year with ESPN. So it's all about preparing for that big payday. And of course, you have the expansion of the college football playoff. I believe that starts next year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
So it's all in preparation for that. As you try to put yourself in the best position to participate in that tournament, which is a big payday, by the way. So it all comes down to the money at the end of the day. Well, we have a big time super conferences against non-conferences. I hope it doesn't turn that way, but on the outside it looks that way as far as what we see right now.
Yeah, and it's a little bit weird. Like I said, it was so weird when Colorado left the Big 12 to go to Pac-10, now 12. So I always thought it was a little bit weird when they did that. But like you said, it's sort of like the money chasing in the end of the day. So they thought that maybe with the TV deals, they'll probably get a little bit more on the TV side, money side with the Big 12. So we just see what the Pac-12 does. Of course, UCLA are going to be leaving next year, and now Colorado's leaving. So you're kind of like you're wondering like, okay, where do we go from here? I'm talking about the Pac-12. You're already you're already having a hard time with the TV contract. So this isn't going to help. So I don't know. I mean, my head's spinning from and hurting from all these moving around. It's just absurd at this point.
Is that Deion Sanders calling you?
There might be Deion on the phone, but yeah. So
he might be recruiting you to come to Colorado.
Maybe, who knows? Yeah, look, a little NIL money. Depending on NIL money is. We'll talk, but yeah. So it's gonna be interesting to see what happens with this. But yeah, it's gonna be I'm sure there's gonna be more conference maneuvering, if you will, coming up. So with all this whole year, especially with schools coming back, you got practices starting to happen, starting later this week into next week, with some of the football and the soccer and women's volleyball, they're starting to practice again. So it's only the beginning, folks. I'm sure we're going to be seeing more and more of this. So we'll see what happens.
All right, you're listening to Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. We might have to pick this up on Friday, Lakina, but I'll just get the ball rolling. This ranking comes to us from our good friends at CBSSports.com. And Jordan DeJohnny, I believe it's the author, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, he says he has his personal rankings of the top 10 wide receivers for 2023 in the National Football League. I'll just go through the list. I'll go through the back half of the list. Starting at number 10, Jalen Waddle of the Miami Dolphins. Number 9, Deebo Samuel of the San Francisco 49ers. Number 8, CeeDee Lamb of the Dallas Cowboys. Number 7, A.J. Brown of the Philadelphia Eagles. And number 6, Cooper Kupp, who was injured last year for the Los Angeles Rams.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised. Well, I mean, I'm not surprised that he's not that high. I mean, he was actually having that quote unquote, good year, even though the team itself was. I'm talking about Cup had a
Yeah.
down year, so before he got hurt. So interesting that he has him up that high. I mean, Debo. I mean, we'll just see how much he has left in the tank, how much they're going to use him. Because remember, he's also a running back too. He might be playing quarterback if they, well, Purdy's been doing pretty well with the rehab, so he might be back before the first preseason game in a couple of weeks for the 49ers. We'll see where Trey Lance is by then. But, CeeDee Lamb, I think you wonder, okay, how, Dak, how is that going to kind of sort of transpire? We know what A.J. Brown can do, especially, we should see, will he be used more? Because they got about 12 running backs over there in Philadelphia. So, it'll be interesting to see, he may not mind that. So who knows with that one? But I think I got them all right, though, all five that you mentioned. Oh, well, no, the one from Miami,
Jalen Waddle. He's at number 10.
Yeah, so I'm interested to see, especially if I think we talked about it for the last few weeks. I mean, Tua's health. I mean, that's going to be the key if he can have a breakout year. So, if Waddle can have, we saw flash them last year before Tua got hurt. So the key is going to be, can Tua stay healthy more than anything?
Yeah. Continuing the list from Jordan Dejani from CBSSports.com. His top 10 wide receivers to watch for. Finishing off the top half of the list, number 5, Stephon Diggs of the Buffalo Bills. He needs to have a great year. The whole team needs to have a great year in advance in the playoffs. Over his issues, wherever it is going on with him, between him and Josh Allen, they'll be signed, sealed, and delivered. Number 4, Jamar Chase of the Cincinnati Bengals. Number 3, Devontae Adams of the Las Vegas Raiders. Number 2, Tyreek Hill of the Miami Dolphins. And, of course, number 1, Justin Jefferson of the Minnesota Vikings.
Well, I'll do Tyreek Hill. Same thing I feel about that with Jalen Waddle. I mean, again, it's all gonna depend on Tua's health. We know Hill can be a running back too, but I think the receiver is really going to be more that he wants to do. So again, it's all going to be about Tua's health. That's going to be the $1 million question. Can he stay healthy? So that's a whole thing with the Miami as a whole. Stephon Diggs, I mean, I'm he said that, look, they've hunted out whatever issue was. So again, as long as it doesn't show on the field, I think whatever issues that they are, hopefully they've worked it out. Who are the other ones on that list? Oh, sorry, my memory is kind of like
Okay, my screen can come back up. Number 3 was Devontae Adams of the Las Vegas Raiders. Number 4 was Jamar Chase of Cincinnati.
Yeah, Jamar Chase. I mean, that's gonna be interesting too, especially with Joe Burrow. We'll see if he's gonna be back by week 1. That calf injury. I know Zach Taylor said several weeks, whatever that means. That could be a month. That could be 6 weeks. We don't really know the extent.
Yeah.
So,
I think the best case scenarios, I think we talked about it on Friday. I didn't think this was going to happen anyway, pre-injury, but I didn't think Joe Burrow was going to play in the preseason anyway. So if you're Cincinnati, your best case scenario is he's going to miss the whole preseason, like you said. Just get ready for September 10th at the Cleveland Browns. That's Cincinnati season opener.
That calf injury could be something to look out for too as the season goes on, especially early if he struggles. Or about Burrow, so that could be as a key to whether or not Chase can kind of be even bigger than what he was last couple of years. So that's going to be kind of like the question there. Now Devontae Adams is going to be interesting because he's going to have Jimmy G. Look, Jimmy G got the go ahead and the clean bill of health. So we'll see if those two can kind of be a nice little tandem together and over there in Vegas, and that's going to be really going to be the thing. So that'll be interesting to see how he does.
Yeah, because I think that who's Vegas's backup, Jared Stidham, I believe, who got some run last year, and that's definitely going to be a major drop off. And heaven forbid something happens to Jimmy Garoppolo this year. So the Raiders have a lot of work to do. Of course, I think they brought him back on a 1-year deal with Josh Jacobs. So a whole lot of pressure is going to be on Adams as well as Jacobs and Jimmy Garoppolo as he's trying to prove himself. He's worthy of being a starter in the NFL, being injury prone. Of course, you mentioned Jamar Chase here. He's looking for a payday. He's going to get it too, of course, after Joe Burrow gets his money. So pressure is going to be on Cincinnati. Can they duplicate what they did a couple of years ago and going back to the Super Bowl? Last year, they came up a game short of reaching their ultimate goal and getting back to the Super Bowl. But there's going to be pressure on Jamar Chase as well. Of course, Stephon Diggs, as we said, hopefully they hugged it out, as he said. We'll see what happens because stuff is going to come up throughout the season. We'll see how he handles it, because remember, he faced the similar situation in Minnesota a few years ago. He got his way and got the hell up out of there via trade. We'll see how he handles it this go around, because I don't think this is the end of it just yet. You hope it is if you're a Buffalo Bills fan, but we'll see, because pressure is on them now times 1,000.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll just see what happens with that. Brian Hoyer, they signed him to a 1-year deal, to remember a couple months ago, Sid. So he's a backup with Jimmy G. So we'll just see what happens.
He's the new Nick Foles.
Kind of, yeah, I guess. Yeah, look, he's got a nice little nest egg there. So we'll see what happens. Justin Jefferson, I think, look, we know what he can do, and we saw in his SB speech a few weeks ago. I think he wants to kind of get even better. So, him and Kirk Cousins, they got a nice little rapport. And I think there always could be a lot on him, especially with Dalvin Cook being gone. So it's going to be interesting to see what he does. But yeah, so I think his mindset is just to get better. So we'll see.
All right. You're listening to Second City Sports, Orange Sports Zone Chicago. Sid Lakina hanging out here with you as now we transition to Old School TV Monday. Lakina, let's hang out at Washington, D.C., and we are going back to the sports folder. Yay! And we are going to salute the George Michael Sports Machine. The George Michael Sports Machine was a syndicated sports-related American television program, which was launched in 1984. The show aired weekends, usually on Sunday nights, originating from WRC-TV in Washington, D.C. It was an NBC-affiliated station. Most stations that aired the Sports Machine were NBC affiliates. The show was an offshoot of a local program that George Michael, a former disc jockey who became a sportscaster, hosted in Washington, D.C., beginning in 1980. Michael hosted the program for its entire run, which ended in 2007, in which Lindsay Czerniak, before ESPN, took over for Michael in 2007. She joined the program as a substitute in 2004 and became Michael's co-host in 2006. And of course, George Michael, not the singer, but the broadcaster, hosted the program from 1984 through 2004, and Lindsay Czerniak took over full-time in 2006 until his end of his run in 2007. It ran for 22 seasons. It was a 30-minute sports program operated out of Washington, D.C. It was NBC's first run syndication sports program, and it helped shape the future of sports programming, and it was a precursor, which many people have said, to ESPN Sports Center, and when CNN had their nightly sports show at the time. So that show was a trailblazer to what we see now, not just on television, but online as well. And George Michael was great at what he did. Even though we were young, Lakina, I remember watching those shows at 11 o'clock on Sunday nights following Sports Sunday with Mark G. and Greco. And, of course, during the football season, we had of course, Steve and Michael, he did some silly stuff on their program as well. But George Michael was a constant professional. He got to the highlights. He had his own delivery style, and it was a great program. Of course, this was popular before ESPN Sports Center became part of popular culture in the mid to late 90s. It set the trend for everybody to do what they're doing now. It was a great show. I loved watching it whenever I could watch it. You can see some stuff right here on YouTube. But I just want to pay homage to that TV show, especially with the sports news going on right now with the start of NFL training camp and, of course, the Major League Baseball trade deadline.
Yeah, I mean, look, I watched it a little bit, even though whenever I could stay up, my mom didn't make me go to bed like at 10, 9:30.
Same here. Yeah, same here.
Those times when, that next Monday, you're off of school, you're able to stay up for a little bit, President's Day, MLK Day and all that. I was able to watch a little bit of it. Yes, right. Well, yeah, it was best. And summer break too. I mean, of course, when baseball comes, it was. But really, the best time to watch that show was during the football season because he would, show some of the best highlights, also to some of the dumb highlights, as he would call it. Yeah. So that was actually pretty funny when he showed some of the silly highlights. But those are probably the best part about it. I mean, he was definitely one of those guys, like he said. That was one of those shows where, like you said, that was way ahead of his time. That was before ESPN, became readily available in numerous homes. It was before CNN, sports, really good times. But and it was the old sports channels, from back in the day. So he definitely kind of like epitomized and sort of like became a trailblazer in that front because no one was really doing that. And I think he kind of brought the national stuff, to kind of the local NBC stations, if you will. And I remember when Lindsay Czerniak took over, I thought it was good, but you can kind of tell that something was kind of missing. Like you said, Sid. I mean, cable was becoming a big thing, so was YouTube and all, and social media and all that. So that kind of, unfortunately, that was kind of the end of that. So, but you remember, Lizzie's gone on to, I think she's doing a lot of freelance work now. I know she's been doing I think she does a podcast too with her husband Craig Melvin, who's of course NBC's correspondent, co-host on the Today Show, and two beautiful kids they have, by the way.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, this was definitely kind of like sort of kind of reached out to some like the best moments, and he wasn't George wasn't afraid to make fun of people, so I think that kind of like opened the door for that in that sense.
And he interviewed some of the biggest stars in sports, including King Griffey Jr., Randy Johnson, Michael Jordan. I actually saw an interview that he did with Michael Jordan after the Bulls won their third NBA title over Phoenix. Of course, he had that good banter with people as well. And they also did some great feature stories as well. So it wasn't just about the highlights. They did some great feature stories as well. I mentioned Randy Johnson. I think it was in that same episode, Lakina, that he talked about. If you go look it up. I know my mind's racing fast, but go look it up. Someone put this up on YouTube a couple of months ago. The re-airing of the Bulls Suns Game 6 championship. Someone put that up a few months ago. I ended up watching that last week, and this person recorded the George Michael Sports Machine episode right after it. They had the Michael Jordan interview in. They had the feature story about Randy Johnson. At that time, he was pitching for Seattle, but about the relationship between him and his father. I'm not going to give it all away, but I thought that was a great feature as well. They did feature stories, not just the highlights, and again, also gave the headlines and the previews of the upcoming games for the upcoming week, like we try to do here. And so they were trailblazing for everything. Many of the things that ESPN created over the years for Sports Center, I guarantee you they got it off of George Michael's Sports Machine. Yeah,
very similar to what you saw now. Of course, the not plays of the week, as you said. Of course, some of the in-depth. You kind of got to know the guys, the athletes a little bit there. Some of the interviews that he did, he kind of like got a lot of those players out of their comfort zone and be a little bit more open. That's what they were doing, back in the day. So yeah, I think he definitely kind of helped sort of pave the way for that. Like for ESPN, like you said, CNN Sports Tonight. Then, so I think he definitely kind of helped, in sort of like make that. Sort of like a big thing here that we see now with Sports Center and all podcasting and YouTube. It kind of like paved the way for all of that. And of course, George would sadly pass away a couple years after he retired in 2009 and 2009 due to lymphoma. So he sadly he died of cancer. But his legacy lives on, and I know that I think they still have his picture in the NBC DC affiliate, the NBC4 affiliate in DC. I think they still have his picture up in their sports department. So he definitely is sort of a well-beloved figure that is still missed to this day.
Yeah, so we like to salute on our Old School TV Monday, the NBC syndicated sports highlight show on Sunday nights, George Michael's Sports Machine. Makina, close us out.
All right, you can follow me, Keenan McGee, on the Twitter, and I can't go again, the IG.
You can follow yours truly, Cindy Brown, on the Twitter, X, and the IG at CK80. Once again, at CK80, that's SIDKID80, SIDKID80. Make sure you download that Sports Zone Chicago app wherever you get your apps. Make sure you follow Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And please subscribe to our podcast, War Media Podcast, WARR Media, PODCASTS. We are available on all podcast platforms, including the iHeartRadio app. And make sure you give War Media a follow at WARR Media on all social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And thank you very much in advance for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
And we'd like to thank Mr. Vinnie Parise from Fansided and the Barroom Network for joining us today. He did a great job breaking down the White Sox, Major League Baseball, hockey, and Bears football. You'll definitely hear him back on this program again soon. Of course, you can hear him as a freaking guest on Sean and Maya in the morning right here in Sports Zone Chicago. Make sure you tune in to their podcast tonight, the South Burbs Hitmen, with our guy Joe Mandel, friend of the show here on Second City Sports. That's tonight at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time right here on YouTube. Just type in the Barroom Network on YouTube, subscribe to that channel as well, and catch that program.
All right, absolutely. And of course, speaking of your catching program, you can get Sports Zone Chicago anytime, anywhere on Roku TV. There you go. So, of course, if you got the Roku TV, or whether you have it on the app or on the Fire Stick, you'll just type in Sports Zone Chicago. right there, the near your Play Store. It's all right there for you. You can catch our show, Sean and Maya, the Smoke Fellas. I hope they're coming back tonight. I hope. Also, too, and a whole lot more. And I know they're going to have some great content coming up with the NFL season starting in about a little over a month from now. So, no excuses. Celebrate with the squad. You have the program, Sports Zone Chicago, Roku TV, anytime, anywhere, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, anytime you want.
Yeah, and we will provide. And speaking of Second City Sports, you can catch us live in living color every Monday, every Friday from noon to 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, right here on Sports Zone Chicago. One more again, as the kids would say. Catch Second City Sports live in living color every Monday, every Friday from noon to 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, right here on Sports Zone Chicago.
All right, Sid. So first, Sid, I'm the king. You got the baseball. Well, I'm sure we'll talk about the trade deadline and all that stuff. Coming up on Friday. We'll also have our girl Christine Manica once again join us for KXRB. Of course, you can catch if you guys are at the women's soccer, you can catch the World Cup that's still continuing. They're finishing up the group plays. I think the U.S. women. I think they play tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. So make sure you guys check that out on the Big Fox Network. And of course, the baseball and all the other sports that are going on right now. And I believe there's going to be. I think next week. I think it's going to be the Hall of Fame game, if I'm not mistaken. So definitely going to be some football coming up soon. So so enjoy all the sports. This week for Sid, I'm the king of this Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. Finally getting some relief from this hot weather all over the country. So I know folks are going to be glad about that. So so enjoy all the sports and of course stay safe and be good to each other. And we'll see you Friday.
Bears, holla!